So you want to know how to preach more effectively. I want to give you some of the same tips that I give to pastors who contact me to coach them to become better communicators for Jesus. First tip to preaching more effectively is to love God. Now, when we think about that word love, what does it mean? Because love means different things in different contexts. And I hear people say, I love God all the time. So do you love God the way that you love chocolate chip cookies? Do you love God the way that you love sports? When you say, I love God, what do you mean? The love that I'm referring to is this life-consuming love that penetrates your entire being. It's in your mind, it's in your heart, it's in your soul. You remember when you finally got to date that person you had a crush on? You wanted to spend every waking moment with them. The only thing that consumed your thoughts was looking into their eyes and listening to their voice. You missed them even though you just saw them 5 minutes ago. That's the type of love that I'm referring to. When we present the gospel with that type of love that's constantly thinking about God, that love that's constantly wanting to be with God, that love that grows greater and greater every day, then the people that hear us speak, they're going to want that same love. Tip number 2 to preaching more effectively is to love people. Begin to see the people that you're preaching to as having one foot on earth and one foot in eternity. And if this was their last sermon that they were going to hear, what would you tell them? There's a man, he was driving. It was a dark road, it was raining outside, and all of a sudden he just comes, boom, to a stop, a halt. And in front of him, when he looked out the window, the bridge was out. And if he would have kept going, he would have went over the edge and crashed into the rocks below. Then fear gripped him. He began to think about all of those people that he saw heading this way. So he turned his car around and he started heading back, flashing his lights and honking his horn, trying to get people's attention. Finally, he got out of his car and he's waving his hands. Hey, stop, danger, danger, stop, danger. Because he didn't want them to drive over the edge and to smash in the rocks below. That's the type of love that we need to have for the people that we preach to. We need to be concerned about them going over the edge of life and crashing in the rocks of sin. And when we begin to preach with that type of love, people will connect to what we're saying emotionally. And they will understand that we love them. I have helped several pastors develop the skill of visualizing their audience in sermon preparation and sermon delivery. If you would be interested in learning that skill, there's a link in the description below with my email. Click on it and I'll contact you. Now back to the tips. We looked at loving God, we looked at loving people. Another tip for preaching more effectively is to be prepared. As communicators of the gospel, we need to be prepared spiritually, emotionally, mentally, and physically. This preparation is created when we have a rhythm to our week when things should be done. I have sat in services and I've coached pastors where there were no sermon notes, no words on the screen. They left their object lesson at home. There was no service flow, so there were long periods between various elements. The result of not being prepared is disconnectedness from your church. People will begin to think about what happened last night, what's going to happen today, what's going to happen next week. The worst case scenario, they'll begin to ask themselves, why do I come? Being prepared creates a flow in your sermon that will help your audience to follow what you are saying, so it will increase the engagement and the transformation. So we are to love God, love people, be prepared. The next tip to preaching more effectively is to internalize the text. Read the text over and over again until it burns within you. I enjoy reading the text in various translations because it gives more meat to the text. One of the greatest speeches that was ever given was Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream" speech. The words of that speech was so internalized within him that he was able to present the truth with power, with passion, and with authority. When the text is internalized within us, when it becomes a part of us, we will present the truth with conviction and with confidence. As your church listens to you, they will know that you truly believe what you are saying. So allow the text to soak within your being. Next tip to preaching more effectively is to imitate the mood. As you're reading the text, understand what is going on. Understand how the people are feeling and try to understand the emotion the author was trying to portray within that text. Which of the basic emotions was the author trying to portray? Happiness, sadness, fear, anger, disgust, surprise. If the text is about a celebration, then be enthusiastic and excited in your presentation. If the text is about fear, then be quiet, cowardly, reserved. By imitating the text, the mood of the text, you're drawing your church into your message because they are connecting with the text on an emotional level. The next step to communicating more effectively is to communicate with excellence. Read through your sermon several times before you present it. You should be so familiar with your sermon when you get up to preach that your notes are more of an outline and not a resource to remember. I got a call from a pastor that I coached on communicating with effectiveness. He said he was so glad that he developed the habit of reading his sermon several times before he preached. Because there was a Sunday when he got up to preach, he opened up his Bible to his text, he looked down, his notes were gone. He left them in the church office. But he read his sermon so many times that he was able to present his message without his notes. Communicating with excellence is more than just reading your sermon several times. It's the way that you present your sermon. It is making sure your grammar is correct. It is using various facial expressions, various hand gestures, and projecting your voice at various volume levels. As your church listens to you communicate with excellence, they will be drawn into the Word of God. They will be challenged to be different and transformed by the truth you are presenting, because they're able to connect and internalize the message that you are presenting. At this point, you may want to know how to make your sermon delivery better. Watch this video right here where I will give the one key to successful sermon delivery. Thanks, everybody.